Ananda the ox was quite simply enormous. With muscles rippling under his frame and his huge curved horns, he was a fearsome sight in his village in Benares. Yet, the children didn't think twice before cuddling up to his massive head or stroking his broad back. One look at Ananda's gentle eyes, and you knew he wouldn't hurt a fly.
Ananda, 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 Ananda.
Billa, his owner, knew that too. He would sit in the sun, stretching his thin arms above his head, observing Ananda with pride. Who would have thought that such a tiny calf would become such a splendid creature? Yet, as the days went by, Ananda began to feel restless. Billa is so good to me, he thought. He has hardly any money, but he looks after me so well. What can I do to repay him? It took him some time to hit upon the perfect plan. And though it was quite late, he rushed over to Billa's hut and poked his gigantic head through the door. "Are you feeling all right?" demanded Billa anxiously. "Is there a problem?" "I want to help you," said Ananda, coming straight to the point. "And I only have my strength to offer. But I have a plan. You must go to town tomorrow, find a rich merchant, and bet him 1,000 silver pieces that your ox can pull 100 cartloads of boulders, gravel, and stones, all at once." Billa frowned. "Are you crazy? That's impossible. 100 carts full of stones and rocks? Do you want everyone to laugh at me?" "Don't you trust me?" asked Ananda sharply. "Have I ever let you down in all these years?" Billa had to admit that his faithful ox had never let him down. "Well then," said Ananda calmly, "just do as I say." The next morning, Billa set off to town, quite unsure about his task. At the market, he dove into a familiar shop and looked around. A well-dressed merchant sat in a corner, talking loudly and waving his hands. The rings on his fingers sparkled. Well, here was a rich merchant, all right, Billa thought. He took a few deep breaths and approached the man. May I join you?" Billa asked. The merchant nodded his head vaguely, so Billa sat down and waited. Then Billa said, "I have a very strong ox." The merchant paused. So, my ox is the strongest in this land. He's so strong that he can pull 100 carts loaded with boulders, gravel, and stone. The merchant snorted. "That's impossible." "Why don't we lay a wager?" went on Billa bravely. "What about 1,000 silver pieces?" The merchant looked surprised. "All right," he said. "Bring your ox to the town square tomorrow morning. But remember," and he wagged a threatening finger, "if he can't do as you say, you have to give me 1,000 silver pieces." Billa nodded and walked as fast as he could back to his village. Once there, he told Ananda that the deal was fixed, and the ox sighed with satisfaction. Now, at last, he could repay his master. And so, while Billa spent the night worrying about the task that awaited his ox, Ananda dreamt of a wealthy Billa living in a magnificent house, surrounded by luxuries. The next morning, Billa could hardly swallow his frugal breakfast. He sat, frowning, at the doorway of his hut. When Ananda lumbered over to him, Billa squirmed away. The ox regarded his master with patient eyes. "Don't worry," he said. "Just trust me." Billa did not know whether to feel worried or annoyed. He sighed and got to his feet, preparing himself for the long walk to town. As they approached the town square, they heard the noise. Cheering, clapping, singing and shouting. Word had travelled quickly about Ananda, and the entire town had come to witness Ananda's strength. Billa took one look at the eager crowd and at the 100 loaded carts and at the merchant. His heart sank. "I'm going to be a laughing stock," he fretted. "Ananda will never be able to pull these heavy carts. Oh, why did I agree to this foolish plan?" As the yoke was set on Ananda's shoulders and fastened to the cart ropes, Billa's anger rose. "Serves me right," he muttered furiously, "for having listened to the words of a beast." Striding forward, he lifted his whip and brought it crashing down on Ananda's hide. "You stupid creature," he cried. "Go on, pull those carts." Ananda's eyes flew open in shock and pain. Turning his massive head around, he gave Billa a long, measured look. Then, he dug his hooves firmly into the ground. Standing still as a boulder, he stared ahead, while shouts, pleas, and cries rang out on all sides. It was as if he were nailed to the spot. The carts remained where they were, and the crowd's disappointed cries grew louder and louder. A desperate Billa threw himself at the merchant's feet, begging for mercy. "You really have a strong ox, don't you?" smirked the merchant. "Oh yes, the strongest in the land." He laughed till his chins trembled and then said, "Go home, you foolish fellow, and don't make such silly deals again." Miserable and frustrated, Billa pushed through the mocking crowd and raced home. Never would he show his face in town again. And, at that moment, he didn't care if he never saw Ananda again either. That night, a huge head poked through his door. Billa sprang to his feet. "Get away from here!" he shouted. "You wretch! You made me agree to your foolish plan, and now everyone is laughing at me." "Why did you hit me and call me names?" demanded Ananda. "Have I ever let you down before? Was this my reward for wanting to make you rich and happy?" Billa wiped the tears of shame from his eyes and suddenly looked sheepish. "You're right," he said sadly. "I shouldn't have treated you like that. You didn't let me down. I let you down." He hugged Ananda's head. "Will you ever forgive me, my friend? I am so sorry." "If you are truly sorry, then do as I say," rumbled the ox. Billa listened closely to Ananda. Thereafter, matters were settled in no time at all. Of course, this involved another trip to town and another unpleasant meeting with the merchant. But Billa merely gritted his teeth and got on with it. A new deal was struck for 3,000 silver pieces this time, and fresh arrangements were made. And so, as the sun rose on a new day, Billa and Ananda made their way back to the town square, where a noisy crowd and 100 laden carts awaited them. There's that crazy man again with his foolish ox. But as the yoke and the ropes were attached to Ananda, Billa patted his head. "My friend, this is your time," he whispered. "Pull the carts and let these people see your strength." The great ox nodded and, using every ounce of strength in him, pulled. The wheels on the long row of carts jerked out of the earth and began to spin till they were rolling around the square in a smooth, orderly line. The crowd gasped at the magnificent sight and cheered wildly. From that day on, the streets of that town in Benares rang with a special song.
When Ananda was a little calf with legs that swayed and shook, none that saw him would have given more than a passing look. But time went on and he grew and grew to an amazing size. He was huge and strong and brave and so exceptionally wise. When Ananda was a little calf with legs that swayed and shook, none that saw him would have given more than a passing look. He pulled 100 cartloads of gravel, stone and rock, moving just as if he were out on his morning walk. Now Billa's a very rich man, thanks to this noble one, and word will pass forevermore on what this ox has done.